Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the OC. Happy holidays. Merry Crismukkah. Do you all have your Yamaclauses on? I don't even have one. I think you can still buy them. I hope 2024 has been a wonderful year for you all. It has been for us. I would like to take a moment to thank you all for going on this epic OC rewatch journey with us. Rachel invited me back in, we started Welcome to the OC Bitches back in April of 2021. She actually invited me in 2020. But that means I've been podcasting for almost 4 years now. And you know what? To say that I've enjoyed every moment would be an understatement because I have enjoyed every moment. But there were a couple times when I forgot to hit record on the audio and that really sucked. If you remember, that was an episode with Danny Pellegrino. I think it was like episode 16. Anyway, I digress. It's been such an honor to do the show, and I had so much fun reconnecting with everyone involved on the OC and connecting with all of the fans, and it was really, really special for me to do the podcast recently with CG, my favorite and only daughter. So thank you, honey. But that is why today's episode is even more special. Coming in at number 33 is The Strip with guest and editor Jeff Granzow. This is our last episode of Beyond the OC. Yes, the podcast is coming to an end. It is the end after today. It is a bit premature. I know this is only number 33 in the countdown, so I will definitely post the list on my Instagram. But really, after much thought and consideration, it is time for me to move on. And I just want to thank you all so much. So one more thing about this episode. If you remember when Rachel and I first talked about The Strip, it was the episode that we had Adam Brody on. And we had such a great conversation. And we talked for, it was hours. I think we had him for like 2.5 hours. Anyway, it ended up being like 2 episodes. But we never really talked about the episode so much. So like we get to do in the episode today, and Jeff had some really great behind the scene tidbits about the episode. So please enjoy the very last episode of Beyond the OC, The Strip with Jeff Granzow. Welcome to Beyond the OC. We're on number 33, The Strip, season 1, episode 26 with one of our dear and favorite editors, Jeff Granzow. So I just wanted to say that when we did this episode before, Jeff, we've been doing this countdown, this spin-off podcast. You joined us on the other podcast with Rachel. But this episode, we had Adam Brody on, of course, which is probably the most viewed or listened to episode, right? But through that episode, people were really excited that we had Adam on, but we really didn't talk about the episode. So when this episode came up, I was like, this is an opportunity to chat with somebody who actually very importantly helped with this episode. So,
well, it's interesting because this was actually the first episode of television that I ever cut of it. Well, that with full credited and by myself and everything. I mean, I definitely had my fingerprints on a lot of other stuff, but this was my first solo experience in the chair. So
I noticed that on the IMDb. I was like, oh, this is even, because we had Norman on because he always just loves to talk about everyone who worked on the show. And we were talking about what a great episode this was. And James Marshall had directed the episode that we were, The Secret. And then they had him for this one.
I watched that podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was cool.
So we were talking about how, getting into the detail of like why James was such a great director. And then we talked about, and as this episode came up and I realized that you did it. So I'm just glad you came to talk with us.
Yeah.
Let me do this. Let's do the synopsis really quick. I'm sure everyone knows, but Seth's neurotic sleeplessness means Ryan can't sleep either. And soon the boys are up and questioning Teresa about her stay because she's in the pool house and Ryan's on the ground. Funny. Anyway, unaware she's hiding a pregnancy test. Julie frets over her wedding plans while Caleb dodges work talk with Sandy to go to the Vegas. Jimmy dreams of a new beach house before crashing Caleb's Vegas bachelor party with Sandy and the boys. Seth has a wild idea to fund Teresa's move with card counting. And in the Vegas, they meet the mysterious Jen who brings along some friends. Summer is going to kick some ass. Meanwhile, Kirsten's bachelorette bash with strippers ends in a Haley-Julie pool brawl. Sandy confronts Caleb's shady scheme, leading to Jimmy landing a punch while Ryan returns to Marissa, only to learn Teresa is pregnant. And it might not be Eddie's. Ha ha ha. So
I feel like
what about action?
I'm just surprised so much Whoa, my voice.
Yeah.
The radiators have now turned on in Chicago, which means everything's dry.
Yeah, right.
Just 45-minute show. I'm surprised that much happened in 45 minutes. Like I watched it yesterday and just you reading all that, like there a lot goes on in this episode.
I know. And it went by pretty quickly. So let's just talk really. So one of the things that we do on this podcast that's different, Jeff, than what we've done before, where we were going scene by scene and such. Now I asked the fans for comments about their favorite scenes or memories of the show, and we let that drive the conversation. And, I post on my Instagram, and then people tend to gravitate. A lot of times it's interesting how the fans actually tend to say the same thing over and over again because some scenes are more memorable than others. But just to start it off, one of the reasons that people just said that the strip is great, why? And let's see, Marcel O. Fem. I can never say these names, by the way. CG, can you see that one?
Marcelo F. Menendez.
There you go.
Menendez.
This ep is special because, and I love this because he's from Brazil, it moved everyone out of Newport and it introduced me a little bit to Vegas as a Brazilian teen. Isn't that interesting? Like the cultural impact. How do you remember getting, let me then ask you, how do you remember being told, okay, you this is your first episode, you get, like, what does that process look like when you get to take, be the editor for your first episode? Well,
it's interesting that I had done a lot of work in particular on the telenovela episode. So this one this was almost in a way my sort of second hurrah, but for various reasons, that one, I wasn't credited on that one, and kind of Norman did a lot of the work on that one too. So this one, I don't know, was it when I was first told that I was going to be doing it? I don't know. It just kind of happened organically, I guess, because there were two. It was just Norman and Matt editing the whole season, and to have just two editors on a hour-long show is pretty unheard of.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they really had their work cut out for them, and they'd get backed up. And by the time this episode rolled around and everything, it was the end of the season, and they needed some help.
Everyone was a little weary from what we all understand, I think. I was never weary. I was just like the perfect job for me.
That's what you say every single time. It's like, did you read the book? People complained about the job, but it was great for me. It was fine for me. I loved it. It was great.
Well, I wasn't, I always think about that. I was always so aware of when, if I was working 3 days a week, the crew was there every single day. And oftentimes they might live in Lancaster and they're driving, so I really didn't have anything to complain about at all. This episode is brought to you by Rhone. So during the holidays, it's a busy time, but I still need to, be comfortable. So I wear loungewear pretty much every day, and I need it to be sleek, flattering, and functional for comfort, both at home and out and about. I want to look good without having to think about it. The all-new Rhone Women's Recover collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and super versatile loungewear I have ever tried. I'm wearing my favorite lounge set right now. It's the Dream Glow pullover and jogger set in taupe mist. The signature heavenly knit fabric has a dreamy inside-out softness and chafe-free seams, which is always a plus when my step count is really high on these shopping days during the holidays. And I love the neutral colors. It's stylish, easy to care for, and the odor-free tech is a great advantage for all-day wear. The Rhone Women's Recover collection champions rest as an integral part of any well-balanced life. Head to rhone.com/OC and use promo code OC to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to rhone.com/OC and use code OC. Rhone, for every day, for every you, forever forward. But so up until that point, were you just did you have editor credit or were you assistant editor?
No, I was an assistant
right
up until this point. Yeah.
And then then the credit changes and such.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where our assistant work on the OC fortunately was not that complicated. So we definitely had time to sort of learn our craft as editors. And Matt and Norman, of course, we've talked about this before. They were just always so generous in teaching us and mentoring us and sort of pitching us to Josh and Stephanie, just telling them, like, look, these guys, they can do this stuff.
And I think that's one of the things that we've learned after doing this podcast for a number of years now, is just how many people really got their start on the show. And then you had people like Norman mentoring so many people underneath and just learning on the job. People always wonder, how do you get into that industry? And it's an industry you're well respected when you start. You start at the bottom and you work your way up, and people want to continue to work with you, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully you get to learn from the best, and it's an atmosphere of teaching. I think there's a lot of people who believe that it's an atmosphere of it's my job to pass it on. And I certainly think that way as an actor. If you're working with young people, it's a way to, you have to learn somehow, right?
Yeah. The thing is, there's just no way that we could really return the favor to Norman and Matt in any kind of reasonable way. So the next best thing is to try to pass it on to our own assistants as best we can. And
yeah.
What was it like? You said this is the first one that you fully edited on your own. And if I might be wrong, but I feel like this is the first episode in season 1 that's completely out of Newport, obviously, except for like just the beginning. Did you feel that it was a little bit harder for your first job being like a big episode? You don't have the usual, scenes in Newport and things like that. Or was there any different process in editing?
I don't think it was particularly more difficult than other episodes because of the location change or anything. Number one, James Marshall was so good. I mean, we in the editing room loved James Marshall, just because of the footage he got. It was so dynamic, so rich. The camera movements he made and just the way he captured faces and everything. I know there was some rumblings that it was a little tougher on the cast and crew with James here and there, because, and I think Norman might have talked about this a little bit when you talked to him a couple of weeks ago. But up in our room, we're sort of shielded from all that. We just see the results, and we're just like, we want this guy as much as possible. Unfortunately, he was the producing director on Smallville, so we didn't really get him much after this. I think he just did those 2 episodes.
Oh, that's why I always wondered, like, when they like somebody so much, like, why aren't they back?
Yeah.
Because we tended to, by the 4th season, we only had the small handful. And at CG, I think they went to Miami first. No, they don't go to Miami till this.
No,
you're right.
I thought Miami was season 2.
That's right. It's not until the next
this
season.
is the first completely out of Newport episode.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and the other crazy thing about the thing about Vegas, shooting in Vegas is it's got to be a logistical nightmare because they don't shut down the casinos. I mean, that everything you see in the background, like at least in the way background, that it is just people in the casinos doing their thing. I mean, they certainly had extras, closer to the camera and that they could kind of control a little bit.
Right.
But it's very loud. Like you can't, there's no noise control or anything. So all the dialogue is pretty dirty. And
do you think it was dirty or were you guys able to use some of the dialogue, or was it all ADR?
No, it wasn't all ADR. Our sound guys were great. They could clean it up as best they could, but there was definitely some ADR. But in addition to just the noise, I mean, trying to get the sort of rich the footage that he got and the performances that he got and everything that he was up against, shooting in Vegas, it's just, to me, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, especially the ones in front of the Hard Rock or when they're on the bridge, extremely, extremely public places.
Oh yeah, in the pool, and I mean, and the Hard Rock is not, or wasn't, it's not around anymore, but it wasn't exactly known as being one of the calmer casinos.
Right.
I have spent plenty of my own time in that hotel. I had a bachelor party there
in the Vegas.
At that Hard Rock. I mean, I think the Hard Rock is now taking over the former Mirage.
Oh, really?
but that particular hard rock is, from my, as far as I know, is gone.
Well, and also there's things like, when they get these iconic shots 21 years ago when we did the show, they would use these cranes to get these shots, and now they have drones. We did not have drones back then.
No.
Everything is
and that beautiful crane shot that opens up the pool scene. I mean, I don't know how he got a crane in there,
right?
With everything going on. But yeah, and that's the shot that, like, every time I think of this episode, I think of that shot, and I think of the song we used that I'd been wanting to use
check
for a
it
while.
out. No.
No. That's
That's later.
That's the BC Boys that brings us into
that's
the
later.
casino. It was a Franz Ferdinand song where the lyric is, "It's always better on holiday," and I love that we got to use that song. And
well, since we're talking about music, I thought I read this. Maybe it's in one of the comments. I don't know where I read this, Mom, but the Beastie Boys. Oh, okay, I see it. JCP Diesel 21 said, "This episode is so fun, jumping back and forth between the gang in Vegas and the ladies at the bachelorette party. I remember there being a pretty interesting story about how the Beastie Boys' Check It Out Now came to be used and heard by the public for the first time in this episode."
I think it was kind of a premiere of that song.
So there was I think I could this is what I have my memory from. There were bands that actually literally debuted songs in episodes, but I think the Beastie Boys, I think this song came out to the public this week the same way it premiered on the show. So it wasn't, so it was kind of simultaneous, but yeah.
Pretty close anyway,
but the Beastie Boys at this point had reached out to them, or reached out to Josh, reached out to Alex Fitzalvis. Because at some point the show was so big, they wanted
to get their music on it. Yeah.
I remember
it being a big deal.
Yeah.
And it may have even happened that, I don't know if this song was like planned from the get-go, or if that all kind of happened in the process of shooting, because I almost feel like we had another song in there that we opened the hotel scene with, and then the Beastie Boys thing happened, and then it came. I could be misremembering that, but
there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, and because if at some point somebody said, "Hey," if I remember the story that the Beastie Boys had reached out to them, I could be somebody's going to check me here, but if they said, "Hey, can you use any of our music? This is our new album." The same way they walked in for the Coldplay album, they actually didn't. They picked "Fix You" for Caleb's death, and that wasn't the song they thought they were going to use. But they picked it months in advance. So you're right; things can like change. So how much did you? I mean, Norman has talked about the process. There's not just one size fits all process in music, but you editors had a lot of say in what you thought worked in the scene. You put your artistry and your creativity behind a scene. And often did Josh and Stephanie, did they say, "We like that"? Or did they say sometimes, actually need to change the song? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think everything that I picked for this episode was originally from Alex and her playlist.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll throw in something just from my own the library in my head, but it's usually coming from the music supervisors ultimately. So yeah, this one I definitely I wanted that song Jacqueline in there from that she had pitched earlier, and I think the Electra Lane song when they first get the idea to start counting cards and whatnot when they're sitting on the couch with Marissa. I wanted to try to use that as like a motif, because I brought that back when the when
prostitutes
Jen,
friends.
When Jen, I think her name's Jen, when her friends come in, we brought that song back. And it's funny, I was watching it. I was watching it down today, and I'm looking at the second time we brought that song back, and I was like, we could have beat this. There's just a little energy hit there that in looking back at it, I'm like, this is the one scene in this episode that I wish I had a little bit of a redo on, because it just didn't really have that kind of punch and humor that I think
Interesting.
quite needed. Not even that, and just in terms of in the way that I cut it too, I think it was a little loose. I think I could have punched it up a little bit more.
Did you always think that, or did you just think that today?
Maybe in the back of my mind, I think it was one of those things where I was just so married to this idea of using that song as a kind of a motif that really, I don't even know that it worked as a motif. Uh-huh. But yeah, I don't know. But just looking back on it today, I was just kind of like, we could have beat this.
So, but in general, did you look back and say, I did a pretty good job for my first show or my first editing?
I gotta say, I mean, I'm looking at it. It's just so fun, and I mean everything. I don't remember a lot of struggle with the episode, other than there's one, but the fight at the pool fight when you guys are slapping and when you and
Amanda
Rigetti were slapping each other and whatnot. That for some reason that was a problematic area in editing.
Because you really only had one take.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot.
Was it so in takes like that? I'm not very behind the scenes, so it's like you're falling in a pool. Obviously, you get wet. You can only film it once. So there are a bunch of different cameras from different angles recording the fall.
You make sure you have all of the dry stuff done, and then you go forward with two stunt ladies who fell in the water.
And so it's
okay. So they fell in, and then you jumped in and did all the actual fighting in the water.
Yeah, but it wasn't just that. The stunt lady, like when she slaps Amanda, I think that was a stunt girl, and I mean there's a lot of like pulling on hair and whatnot that I think the stunt ladies did some of that stuff as well. I think that most of the stuff in the pool, at least what ended up in the episode, is you guys.
You can see after like mom's makeup running down her face.
I think if I'm remembering it right, I was a little reticent to really use much of the stunt doubles
because it didn't look like us.
You're just not like, and I think they may have told me, and I've gotten this note on other shows and stuff, like lay into the stunt doubles a little bit more, like rely on them a little bit more. And so I think I probably did that for the way that it ended up in the cut, and then I think what I did was ended up cutting to Kelly's reactions a couple more times than I had in my original cut. And they're great reactions. She's just sitting there like, okay, typical,
That scene is, I think that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire show.
Really?
And I will say your editing was great, like going back and forth between Kelly and them like screaming at each other in the pool. And it's just, I couldn't tell there were doubles.
Really?
Good,
so,
good.
Yeah, no.
I maybe I don't have a keen eye, but I think the editing was good because I had no idea.
So there were quite a few people that, just if we're going to talk about that storyline, it's interesting that I realized when I was getting ready for this that the episode before is the shower and Julie's sister shows up, Holly, and she makes fun of Julie because she talks about monster trucks, NASCAR, and In-N-Out, and Julie's mortified. But then has no problem like just going hog wild with these strippers. She's
okay.
Like,
I have a side note about Julie, Mom.
Yeah,
just because I always make little comments like this. Your outfit in that scene. In the kitchen with Caleb in the morning.
Oh.
Do you have it? I want it.
No. The pretty white pants. I think I might have
shirt.
the pants. I might have the pants, not the top.
Really?
Yeah, the little white.
You're talking about from the beginning
like,
of the episode.
Yeah, like the white pants, and there was like a blue and orange and white kind of checkered tank top. Like when you're telling Caleb like the different places.
It's funny
that's
how
one of the outfits that I just.
Yeah, I think wasn't there like a strap that kind of came from.
It was like a halter.
Yeah.
There's
I love how classy they make you look sometimes when you're just doing things that are not so classy.
Well, and here's the thing, Julie's funny. You know how some women would be like, "You better not be going to Vegas to get strippers," and Julie's like, hello, you get strippers as a side. Come on. If they're going to do it, we're going to do it. Why not? She's like, they're not getting strippers. I'm like, of course they're getting strippers. And I want one. So when I say this is one of the funnest, it really was it was so fun. to do this show. I mean, this episode.
Mom, will you say your iconic line for us?
Please, Kiki. Just one little stripper trying to make his way in the world naked.
Naked.
Not hurting anyone naked, something like that. I don't know. What did you think about it, CG? CG's always like, she's always, I think when she was younger, seeing mom do certain things was like, but I think she's.
Oh my gosh, I literally wrote down, so I take notes, Jeff, when I watched the episode. And I'm watching it. I thought you were great in this episode, Mom. And I was sitting in my bed watching it on my computer, and I started cracking up when you get on the table and start dancing with the male stripper.
Yeah. Why? Did that make you cringe? Were you embarrassed?
No.
No. You were like, go.
It was so funny. I loved it.
Oh, good.
It was great. I thought like, I like when Julie does that, like lets loose a little bit and isn't her like, uptight. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah. Well, that's your mom likes to dance. So
yeah, that was you dancing on the table. That wasn't really Julie.
And I've said this before, or I don't even know if we got to say this because we were talking to Adam about the world, not so much details about the episode. But when we were shooting that scene, real strippers in Vegas, the guys wear, everyone's seen Magic Mike, but they do these thongs. But standards and practices was like, no.
Do that.
Yeah.
They were like big, almost like diaper size briefs.
Yeah, they were briefs.
They were kind
I don't
of,
remember missing that. It's not something that even. It's not something that occurred to me really. But you're right. Yeah,
Where are they? That didn't occur to me.
CG, I don't know if I'm sure I told this story before, but I had a friend who had a bachelorette party when my friend Donna and I both were pregnant, and our kids are 3 weeks apart, and we had a friend who had a bachelorette party in Vegas. And so we both were there, like 6 months pregnant, and we had to go to one of those. Oh, it was called the Thunder Down Under, and the girls are off
the petting zoo.
Yeah, right. And so at one point they're all drunk, and of course we're not. And they're like, "Get Mindy a lap dance," and I was like, "Hell no! Stay away from my belly. I don't want anybody near my belly and my baby." CG was in us when you were.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. So
yeah, you didn't. I was about to say something so crude.
Yeah. No. We were like, I'm like, no. It was hard for us to even stay awake. We're like, we're pregnant ladies. We're going to bed. Yeah. But we've had plenty of time.
See, I've still never been to the Vegas.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna have to. Well,
the one Hard Rock casino I've been to, Gary, Indiana.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I've
driven through it many times. The old Gary.
That's hysterical.
Great place, Gary, Indiana.
Listen, Carly XO Carr said, quote, just one tiny little stripper. Because of the OC, I need a firefighter stripper at my bachelorette party. So
yeah.
I like that one.
Mom, when I get married, I'm going to request 4 firefighter bachelorette strippers for
I had one at mine.
You did?
Yeah. And it was kind of sad because they knew how much I loved the Bee Gees, so they told him to dance to Saturday Night Fever, and the guy couldn't dance, and it was like I think there was a video somewhere, and we were like, oh my God, it was so sad. Like we were kind of embarrassed.
It was just unfortunate.
Yeah. It's silly.
So the song we were playing there, "Fire," was a scripted song.
Yes.
To go along with the firemen. And there was a line that when Sandy calls that we took out that I always kind of miss. He calls, and as soon as he picks up the phone, he goes, "Do I hear the Ohio Players classic Fire?"
He actually says it.
Funny.
And yeah, for some reason I thought it was cute. For some reason it stayed in for a while, but then they got rid of it.
Is it like it was too like on the nose, like too meta?
I think he just wanted to get into the story.
Yeah.
A little bit quicker.
But it is interesting. It's a very small thing, but Sandy, Kirsten, Julie, nobody cares. You know what I mean? She's like, there's naked men in my living room. And he's like, oh boy, I hope they don't sit on the couch. Like nobody cares. I think there's
right.
And it's let's getting into most of the comments had a lot to do, of course, with Seth and like some of his dialogue.
Well, I will say just real quick that I think that's part of Sandy's charm too. He's like he's not the jealous guy. He's very much like he's got a different story in this episode.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, strippers, another day in the OC.
And Kirsten too, and Julie, like it's not like it's like they're harmless. One harmless. Julie's like, it's harmless, but it's fun.
Okay, before we get into Seth, I want to comment on Sandy. In that scene where Tate ends up punching Alan Dale.
Yes.
Do you remember, Jeff, if that was a double as well, and that was something you had to edit in, or did they do that?
I have a vague memory of having to massage that a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. There may have been, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there was, I could not tell. So,
but I was delightfully remembering the green beam that when I was watching. That was the first thing. When Sandy's just like eating a green bean.
Yeah.
You know, I do have to comment on that storyline, which is, it's like, I thought about it and it was so satisfying. Everybody was so happy that Jimmy punched Caleb and he deserved it. And what's interesting, and I don't think any of us knew what the storyline was going to be, but as the story goes on into the next season, we find out, and because Alan played it amazing, we actually found out that he was trying to save the Newport group, and that with that deal going south, the Newport group goes bankrupt, and that's why, and I think that's where it happened, which I thought was an interesting thing. I mean, now knowing what was going to happen, Alan, there's no way he could have known what the story was, but you see the look on his face. To me, he was almost like, oh, there it goes. Like, he didn't even, anyway. But CG, just so you know, Jeff, sometimes we have a live audience. CG, is anybody in the audience? Do you see it?
Mary said, I grew up near Evanston. And Josephine said, CG's really grateful to be Julie Cooper's daughter. But yes, I am grateful to be Julie Cooper's daughters. Mostly because of all the shoes you give me.
This is a new thing, Jeff, to this year. She's only interested in it this year, which is funny. She was 3. I don't know if you ever remember seeing her around sets. She was 3 when the show started.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I was that like wild little blonde girl riding a little pink scooter around while Adam Brody chased me.
Oh, funny.
Speaking of Adam Brody...
Yeah, I mean,
Seth.
the opening scene, that opening kitchen scene, which can take all day long, but what a great scene to have so many people in there and so funny with the, and I think this was the first moment that I understood the title, The OC, because the way he started talking about the Vegas, it was all of a sudden a light bulb went off. Oh, that's why we call it The OC.
Yeah,
I just didn't quite get it.
Joshisms and this and I remember at one point I think 5 episodes in, Norman's like, it's interesting that every episode starts with the. I wonder why they do that. It's like because it's the OC,
right? Yeah,
keeping with
the and actually every title has a double entendre meaning, and so you're on the strip and there's strippers,
Yeah.
And everyone's obsessed with strippers.
Before that kitchen scene, I want to talk about the opening bedroom scene. There's always like a good Seth Ryan funny little scene in the beginning usually.
Yeah.
This one was so funny. And I want to say I really like the camera work with the editing because you can see Ryan like sleeping and he's right in the camera and Seth in the background like just going up and down, like pestering him. But I did have a question. Why didn't Ryan like sleep on the couch?
Look, I think this is one of those things. If you actually go into the rooms, the chat rooms and all this, you will see people obsessing about why Ryan never stayed in the guest room, or do they not have a guest room? And why does Teresa take over the pool house? It's just for the convenience of the characters to be able to talk together in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah. I'm aware. That was just something I was like, there has to be, like, didn't Luke in that episode? No, they do have a guest room. Because remember, I think it was the last episode we watched, the one before, The Secret, where Luke's dad comes out and Luke gets beat up.
Yeah.
And Luke's dad comes to the house and Kirsten's like, he's asleep in the guest room.
And Haley was living there at one point. So yeah.
The question of why Ryan never slept in a guest room, I do remember having conversations about that. And it was, I mean, nothing major, but I think it was just always because he was this kid come from Chino, and they felt that Sandy would want him to sort of have his privacy and his own sort of his own life in order to transition him into, at least at first it'd be to help with his transition into this family and everything.
Yeah.
Just the nitpicking.
For sure. Now, I mean, there's definitely some of the best dialogue, and Salo Slay says just quoted Seth saying, "I love the hotel. I want to marry the hotel and have little gambling addicted alcoholic kids with it." And then, but this one, I love this little exchange. Jay, the real deal heel, said, "Lots of girls outside Newport seem to really and magically fancy Seth Cohen." Which I think he's referring to Miami. Like, it's the same thing they keep doing. And I thought that was funny. It was like, and I'm like, I don't think it's magic. I think, Adam could get, or Seth could, even though he's very nervous around girls, I think if he had a little more confidence,
I think that's a good point though, because at school, like until he started dating Summer, like he was like the odd one out until Ryan got there, and then we see him going to all these other places, and girls are like fawning over him, and not Ryan. Which is the opposite. I'm
glad that he's not the kind of nerdy archetype that you see in a lot of sort of teen shows. That he does have a certain amount of confidence to him, and a certain amount of like, I don't give a shit about these people. It's more. He has not super concerned about fitting in. He's just happy to be himself for the most part.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and then Mel Bergstedt, I don't know these names. And this person said, "Nah, this just showed that Seth was not the 100% good guy I thought he was." Well, the toying between Anna and Summer showed that too, but this was the nail in the coffin. Definitely one of my least faves. Because I said it was one of my favorite episodes, and they're like, no. So I love people disagreeing, but I love it because I had fun doing it, because I have memories doing it. But I still think it's really fun. I think there's something.
It's interesting. Yeah, I wonder if it's because he's really kind of self-centered in terms of the whole trying to get money and forcing Ryan to gamble and all that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, and the girl, he found himself in this like, oh gosh, and who doesn't want it? I mean, every young boy is like wide-eyed, especially in Vegas, going, I've never been there, and I'm gonna like. There's eye candy, and there's people, and there's energy, and all that. And Rachel very famously has said, I don't know if she'd read the script or knew they were going to Vegas and insisted, because I can see when I rewatched it, I was like,
no, she said she just knew, because she was friends with Josh. She just knew they were going to Vegas, and she called up Josh or talked to him and was like, write me into Vegas.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I want to be there. Write me in.
Because I could see how they could do the script. I could see how the script went along, and without Summer being there, they could easily have just gotten into their shenanigans without her being there. But I think it
added a lot, though. I think it was a great call.
Well, I think it's, oh my gosh, there were some funny reactions. So this person, Glory Dancer 01, said, love this episode just for Summer's reaction. And then Matthew D 1905 said, as a Boise State fan and alum, it's gotta be, his favorite part, it's gotta be when Summer called UNLV, current temp rival for us, a skank. Because her reactions really are quite funny. Yes.
Yeah. She goes, oh, look, more skanks and hoes.
Yeah. Because originally she called her a whore, and she goes, not a whore. She goes to UNLV. Oh, sorry, skank.
Oh, sorry, skank. I mean, I always think that, like, there are girls that just know how to, like, do things in the moment like that, and I was always too shy to do stuff like that. CG, you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call other women a skank.
Right. No. But
they
were, though. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, wait.
No, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to shame sex workers, right?
I'm not. No, that's not what I was saying.
Oh, I wasn't saying
Do prostitutes actually do that? Like they won't tell you they're a prostitute and then all of a sudden it's like you owe me money?
No, I think there's a pretty good I don't know. I kept thinking, why don't they tell the police?
Mom, you don't have firsthand experience?
Oh, no. But I've been in hotels in Vegas where girls you can tell they're sitting there at the bar. And if you walk by and sit down, that you could definitely just meet somebody and they might walk away.
I don't think it's the first time they've tried to do that on TV or movies at any rate.
No. I just didn't know if that was like real life.
It was definitely I kept thinking, like, how do they get out of this?
Great play. When those two guys stepped out in the hotel room, I didn't know it was coming. I didn't remember this episode.
Yeah, but I was a little like the guy comes in and said it's $250 an hour, so that's $5,000, and I'm like, wait a minute, that means they've been together for 20 hours,
right?
20 hours. Like, no, but whatever.
The math isn't mathing.
The math wasn't quite mathing, right?
Right.
Any other moments on the of the episode, CG, that you think?
Well, I guess we didn't really talk about Marissa.
Oh yeah,
but okay. I have another logistical question, not like a inconsistency, but how could the baby be Ryan's? Like,
oh, you don't remember them having sex?
You know I do, but how long ago was that? Because we bounce around in episodes.
Oh, because we're bouncing around. It could.
How many episodes prior was that?
Easily 6, because you can get a reading within like 3 weeks.
So 6 episodes, but I thought the episodes were like meant to be like every couple of weeks.
I don't know. No, I mean it works out, but
not necessarily. There are some that are like the next day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But see, here's the thing. Josh will go to his grave saying it's Eddie's, it's Eddie's, it's Eddie's, and I just think it's a much richer story that if it was Ryan's. He didn't want to ever. There were certain things Josh didn't want to mess with. He was like, there's like Sandy and Kirsten's relationship. He messed with a little bit, but not too much.
And then once he started doing it too much, people got angry.
People wanted some moral centers, I think. And, but yeah, I don't know. I just thought, maybe it goes into two Desperate Housewives or 2 soap opera if it was his baby. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't think that's kind of the story they were looking to tell anyway. I think they had other fish to fry. So it was one of those things where, I mean, I know he talks about burning through story in season 1 pretty quickly, but you know, I think he was more focused on the Ryan and Seth of it all and the family dynamic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Giving a kid to Ryan. It's more like hindsight. Like when we were doing the podcast and when I said, what would happen if it was actually he was like, don't even mess with it. No.
It's Eddie's. It's not even Ryan's.
He wouldn't do that.
We're not even going to touch that.
You know, so there were some really interesting, I just want to, you know, the reaction, one of the reasons we were doing this is like just people over time when we were doing the podcast, there were times when they said we didn't talk about certain things or we didn't discuss. So I just wanted to be able to say that we talked about the strip. Is there anything else that you have memories from or not even just this episode, just memories from the other episodes that you, I mean, you came on the podcast a couple times, didn't you?
Yeah.
Do you have any more memories from this episode that, or some favorite moments or favorite scenes?
You know, it was striking me that James Marshall said something at the time that I just thinking back it was kind of interesting. He said TV is all about this. It's all about the close up, and it's something that I think that's a comment that's very much of its time, and I wonder if he feels the same today because this show was primarily shown in standard def 4:3, the more square aspect ratio. This is before high def was sort of catching on, and I feel like that may have been a sentiment that was more apropos of that when TVs were smaller, and in fact, when we were cutting the show, I mean, we had the ability to look at it both ways in both 16:9 and 4:3.
Right.
And if you look at it now, we were primarily looking at it in 4:3 and cutting it for that. But our mandate from the studio was to sort of protect for 16:9. And it's funny that now when you look at it on streaming, you're only looking at it the full the full frame that we were chopping up, we chopped off, and so you can kind of tell a little bit. I mean, you can kind of tell that everyone is sort of centered in the frame in a weird way, and there are some times where there's little things happening off screen that weren't really, if we had been looking at it closer, we probably would have blown it up a little bit more. But anyway, just back to James Marshall's comment about that. I wonder if he would feel the same today, because I mean, as I've kind of gone on in my career, I've always sort of defaulted to wider shots unless there's a real specific reason to be in these closer shots. But he had this way of really maximizing close-ups, just kind of piggybacking on that comment. I mean, he would make these sort of really elegant camera moves that would either end up in close-ups, like,
yeah, he would go in or like pull out in like a really special way.
And I remember a lot of his work on Smallville being like that as well. Like, he was just a master at finding these clever ways to just maximize the 4:3 close-up. And so yeah, I just remember him saying that and wondering if he would still feel the same now that everyone's got huge TVs that are widescreen. And
I think there are some really, really important close-ups in this episode specifically. Now that you say that, specifically, I loved this editing. I can't believe I forgot to say this. When they go back to the poker table at the very end, and then it cuts to Ryan really close up in the trucker hat.
Yeah.
Like that, I thought was incredible. Just the immediate cut, and then it's just close up on with the trucker hat, and you know exactly what happened. And I think that as a close up was great. It's
a beautiful shot. I mean, because it starts on Vegas, and then Ryan kind of comes. The camera cranes down to see Ryan in close up, and it pulls back, and then there's a whole walk and talk where the camera's, and it's not just a walk and talk where the camera's following them. I mean, it's swinging back and forth between them, and it goes when it swings from one side to the other. It's at a perfect moment in the scene, and I mean, you got to do things like that to sort of maximize the time you have in your day, but it works so well.
Yeah, he has some great shots. Mom, the other episode he did was the one where like Anna and Summer were fighting over Seth, right?
James Marshall did The Secret with where Luke's dad came out.
Right, but that's still when Anna and Summer are fighting over Seth.
A little bit, yeah.
And then because they're like at the table in the library, and it's both those close-ups of like their faces like looking up at Seth. I could be thinking of a different episode, but I thought it was him.
I can't tell you how many people actually commented, CG and Jeff, on that scene itself. I only put one comment, but there were like 10. Endless Megan said, "Let's be real. Favorite part. It's Ryan in the hat at the end. I wish we'd gotten more of that." Because you could see, I remember watching, so I was watching the episode going, is this one of those episodes where they get, because there's so many shenanigans over the year, and I was like, wait, do they get into a fight? Is he going to get beat up by trucker hat guy? And then you cut to, you're almost waiting for it because Ryan always gets into trouble, and you cut to that moment.
The one time he doesn't.
The satisfaction, and you can see Adam or Ben having a good time, and he's in a good mood, and he flings the hat, and there was something really satisfying, and a lot of people did comment on that scene itself. So yes.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you don't see a lot of Ryan succeeding, and this is one of those times where
so true.
not only does he succeed, he does it in this smarmy kind of like,
his mom taught him counting
cards
kind of way.
all along.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing. Ben is quite a poker player in real life. And
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he and Texas Hold'em was really popular in the early 2000s. That's when it was just like exploding, and everybody was doing charity events. And then CG, I don't know where you were, but your dad actually held a poker tournament at our house, and I think Ben was there, and somebody got into a fight. But yeah, anyway,
probably Ben.
But I remember, no, it wasn't Ben. But I remember that he was into poker, and just everybody was really into poker. So it was, I mean,
I remember you had like a full poker table set up when I was a kid.
Yeah, so
like
they gave us like
folding ones.
Yeah. People are very much.
I remember having we had a poker night with a bunch of us from the post department one night at Matt Barber's house.
Oh my gosh!
And so we all started breaking out cigars, and he's like, "You are not smoking those cigars in my house." And we're like, "Come on!"
Right.
It's poker night.
We ended up doing it. He was just mortified.
I know.
Poor guy.
I mean, you got it. You're like, yeah.
It's poker night. He has to be okay with that.
I saw my dad smoke a cigar once, and I was like, because when he was with all the boys, like, and I was like, what? Who is that? Like once in his life, yeah. Oh man, but there was a couple things that I think, I thought it was really interesting, you guys. If there was a lot of comments, of course, on Adam when he was on the show. There were some comments that I just wanted to say because Adam's having this like resurgence in the new show. Have you seen the Nobody That Wants This?
Yeah,
on Netflix. Yeah. I had no idea what it was about, but I'm so Aaron Foster, who was on the OC, really impressed, and it was probably one of my favorite things I've ever seen Kristen Bell in, and I'm so happy for him to have success. Like, and it's almost like people were like, they didn't realize they were starving for Adam Brody.
It's giving this new generation more Seth Cohen.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to compare the two, but
in the early 2000s, I was in love with Seth Cohen, and now I'm in love with Adam Brody in this new show. Like, the younger generation gets to experience him too, which I think everyone should. My
sister texted me and she was like, I didn't realize that was Adam Brody until like 2 or 3 episodes.
Oh, right. Really?
With the beard and everything.
Oh, because she saw him as such a baby face before.
Yeah.
So this was on YouTube, on the YouTube responses, and at the only Rico 9799. As a guy, I can confirm that Seth and Ryan helped shape who I am today. They were like my best friends in a TV show. Crazy how actors can have such an impact on one's life, but they were great role models as a teenage boy. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Role models.
CG, they didn't portray a lot of the outsider types. They were like the 90210.
Okay, yes, I understand that.
But like the kids who liked comic books, kids who liked emo.
I will go to my grave and say Seth Cohen is a narcissist.
But kids aren't. Most teenagers are, because that's part of their survival. It's like, what about me? That's part of your natural growth, but as an adult.
Okay.
But
I mean, I always saw it with him a little bit tongue in cheeky. Anyway, I mean, like I question how much of that his character was really serious about. How self-centered he was. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, it's it's fiction, but it's something that when we were playing it, I sort of felt like it was a little tongue in cheeky, and he was really more of a stand-up guy than he may have come across at times.
I'm just hypercritical. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I'm on the podcast with my mom, is to be extra critical of the things you didn't say before.
Well, because you're that girl who's says, like, why is he acting like that? But I think when you see he makes certain choices that are self-serving, and I think that's what human beings do when you're teenagers, especially when but I thought was so interesting. One of the most interesting things I thought from the whole podcast that I learned was when Stephanie said, no, Seth isn't that smart. When Summer gets smart and she does better and gets into Brown, she said he reads a lot and he thinks he's really smart, but he's not as smart as he thinks he is. And I was like,
so like Summer's actually much smarter than him.
She didn't, because she just didn't. Yes. She ended up being smarter.
That makes sense.
And as in Summer. Book smart, SAT smarter, like just the IQ type stuff. But he was well read and created opinions and had some. Just because you have an opinion or you're subjective or cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're smart. And that's actually a very, I don't know, it's a common thing for people, especially young people. So I remember being in my 20s and we're all like, oh, that movie sucks or that actor sucks. And you do that because you think it makes you sound smart when it does just the opposite. It's just, anyway, so I knew a lot of people who reminded me of Seth and anyway. And then one other person said, and I thought this was really funny because it's true, at Jim Yorkie 82, he said, it is so weird to see, because it was, myself, Adam, and Rachel talking. He said, it is so weird to see, quote, Seth and Julie conversing with each other so much. Their characters had like 3 lines of dialogue together on the whole show, which is true. Adam and I never spoke.
Wait, what scene was that?
In the podcast, Adam and I are discussing the show.
Oh, okay.
So they were like
in this episode, and I was like, I don't remember a scene.
No, they were talking. This is in response to the podcast, and they were saying
understand.
It was really weird to see us discussing the show because they never saw us as people ever having conversation.
I
thought that was funny.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So anyway, well, that's about it for the strip. How are you? How you went on to do other shows with Josh and Stephanie, right? And you even worked on City on Fire.
Yep, City on Fire, and then before that, we did the Runaways pilot and another pilot around that time period.
Yeah.
So yeah, had a wonderful relationship.
Right. They keep it in the family. Actually, my best friend, Melissa Owen, was the post on City on Fire. You guys, she and I just went to New York and we saw Peter Gallagher's play. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That's what, yeah. And we got to interview Peter for the podcast.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart. Okay. I think that's it. Is there anything else? Is there any comments over there?
Josephine said the baby didn't look like Eddie's.
I know, right?
Yeah.
That's why everyone, because yes, he had kind of brownish hair. So anyway.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do like in the future.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your memories.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for your insight on the doubles.
Yeah.
I'll be looking out for it now.
Of course.
That being said, everyone.
Bye, bitches.
Bye, bitches. Bye, bitches. Bye. Okay, guys, that is it. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you all for your continued support of the show, and also my personal thanks to all of those who contributed along the way. There's so many names. Of course, Rachel Bilson for starting this whole thing, Josh Schwartz for writing it, Stephanie Savage, everyone who was a guest on Welcome to the OC, Bitches, and Beyond the OC. And behind the scenes peeps, you know who you are: Diana Goldman Letterman, Katie Curtwright, Parker Smith Flores, Jeff Schweikart, Harris Lane, Mike Jensen, Hazel Miranda, Colin McGinn, Adam Farmer, and CG Mirich. And a special shout out to Tate Donovan, who said yes, like every single time I ever called him and asked him to contribute. He was like, yeah, I'm there. I love that man. I love his attitude. Also, please continue to enjoy the back catalog of the show. It will be there in perpetuity. And I will definitely be posting the list of the favorite top 50 on my Instagram, so it doesn't remain a mystery. So for the very, very last time, bye, bitches. And in the infamous words of Julie Cooper, rock on. Bye, bitches.